Welcome to Empowered by Iron, hosted by Dr. Kristin Lander from Fiercely Fueled Nutrition Coaching and Mary Morton from Grad Gains, the online resource for your fitness needs. Together, we are Empowered by Iron. Hey everyone, welcome to Empowered by Iron. So this week we actually have a really special guest. We have Kristin Pope. Kristin Pope, hey, how are you?
Good, how are you guys?
We're doing pretty well. So why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about you, for those who don't know anything about you, which I think is absurd, but just go ahead and give us a little background.
I am 27. I live in Atlanta, Georgia. I am a competitive Olympic weightlifter and now dabbling into the powerlifting world too. I own my own business coaching nutrition via flexible dieting, and that keeps me really busy. I'm married and I have 2 fur babies that are pit rescues.
That's awesome. And so with your weightlifting, have you been doing this for like 10 years, 5 years? Like, what's the time on that?
I got into it via CrossFit, which I started out actually by teaching Les Mills classes right before that.
Oh, awesome.
So my journey has been a little non-traditional, but yeah, I started out teaching Les Mills body attack, and then from there a personal trainer at the Golds I worked out at started some quasi CrossFit style program there, and I just really liked it right off the bat. So I ended up joining a CrossFit gym a couple weeks later, and I did CrossFit for about 9 months. That was in 2013, and I had ankle surgery in that time, which really sucked. And upon coming back from ankle surgery, I decided that CrossFit is not that fun. So I switched over to weightlifting. So weightlifting only I've been doing about 2 years.
That's awesome. And so, you know, this is kind of like, I guess, the dream for a lot of people who are really into fitness. Weightlifting's actually your full-time job. So can you tell us a little bit about like how you decided to make that huge leap?
Yeah, the first year I did weightlifting, I still worked. I coached gymnastics, and I finally stopped doing that because it was too hard on my body to be spotting all night after lifting all day. So I got a real big girl job in a restaurant management company. So we moved downtown, and a few months after that, I was like, man, I just cannot keep up with all of this and try to be this superstar weightlifter. It's just not going to work. So I just took the plunge and quit my job and dove headfirst into full-time athlete life, which sounds glamorous, but it's got its challenges also.
I'm sure. Well, in that time frame too, you started up your it's called Barbells and Bows nutrition coaching for people who don't know. And then in that time frame, is that kind of when you got started with that?
Yeah, I was coaching a lot of my friends to begin with while I was still working, and that's kind of how I got started. And then those friends had friends that wanted me to coach them, and just started growing that way, kind of by accident, honestly. And it just was eating up a lot of my time also, and that's how I got started. And now it is a full-time job, just with the hours that I decide to work, but it's still, I work the same amount of hours as if I went into work every day.
But you can work in your pajamas.
Right, yeah.
That's the dream.
That's the dream, definitely. So, Kristin, Empowered by Iron is really all about how women's everyday lives have been directly influenced by the barbell or just in the gym and training. So, how has lifting changed your life physically, mentally, or even emotionally? Or has it?
A big part, yeah, it has, definitely. A big part of why I started dedicating so much of my time to lifting was to better manage some anxiety problems I was having. And that had really bothered me for probably 10 years. And it was just a new way to kind of release stress and more so have self-expression in a way where I felt like I was always kind of different, and as soon as I found lifting, it was like I had this culture I perfectly fit into, and everyone around me had the same mindset. So it's been a really good way for me to kind of find my place almost in life, whereas before I was like, couldn't really figure out, not really where I fit in, but just couldn't find my people, and in lifting it's just a lot of like-minded folks together, and it's just been really great.
Yeah, I can completely agree with that. I know for me throughout my high school, I'm just graduated college, so high school is still pretty big to me. But like in high school, it was hard for me to find, just like you said, like-minded people, and it's hard to explain to, I call them normalers, but people who don't weightlift, how this affects me and why it's important. So that's pretty awesome that it helped you with that. I know for Kristin over here, it helped her a lot with those kinds of things. So it's pretty awesome to see how positive weightlifting has impacted our lives.
Yeah. Well, and that's why we started this whole podcast, is because Mary and I had similar stories, and we're like, well, if we have these similar stories, like who else has these stories where they just really felt like they found themselves through weightlifting and all of the things that regular training brings, and then also the community. So.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of how I was always growing up in gymnastics. I always had that group of people that had that huge passion, like we're all in for this one goal, and then when gymnastics was over, that's what was missing in my life, and so I found it again with lifting. It's been really awesome.
That's awesome. So the question, so you see a lot of weightlifters, and this is kind of off topic, I suppose, but a lot of weightlifters have that background of gymnastics. Like, do you feel that really gave you a huge competitive advantage? Because I know gymnastics, it requires a lot of strength, where a lot of other sports don't necessarily require that, like basketball or soccer.
I think there's a lot of gymnasts in the sport because of the same reason I'm doing it. Like, they had that huge thing that shaped their life for so long, and then it has to go away at some point. Gymnastics is not a sport you can do professionally, and it's not something you can continue to do for a long time like you could do with weightlifting or powerlifting. And so I think a lot of us just wanted to find that next thing to keep that going, and more so than the strength from gymnastics, I think it's more the discipline that sets you up for being good at weightlifting. Like being ready to log the hours in the gym, being disciplined on your nutrition, getting enough sleep, not partying all the time. Like, you're already molded to be that way from gymnastics, and maybe some other sports like team sports, you're not always relying on that one person. Like basketball, you mentioned, like you just do your part, and it's not, win or loss doesn't lay on your shoulders only. And I think gymnastics being such an individual sport, it's really comparable to lifting.
I had never thought of it that way.
Yeah, so you came into the sport with like the habits that you needed to be successful already.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. Plus I saw your gymnastics credentials, and you're a pretty good athlete. So,
it's interesting because a lot of the gymnasts that do weightlifting, they were able to finish their career out through college, and then they got right into CrossFit, and my journey was not like that. I had so many injuries. I stopped competing when I was 16 and just started coaching, so there was a big gap in my sports career where I actually got really skinny. I was really muscular gymnast, and then I got really skinny. I was like, I'm just going to run all the time.
Oh, no.
I lost all of my muscles and then basically started over. So it's not like some of my friends that were already like totally jacked right when they started weightlifting. They're like, walk in and squat 250. That was not me.
Oh, the running. I think it gets a lot of us just like that, because that's what I did a lot. When I first got into fitness, it was just, I just ran all the time, and I think I'd be able to squat just like...
That's like equivalent to the word fitness for so many people. It's just like, go run.
Right. I think it has to do with a lot of education of fitness, and, you still talk to people who aren't really as into it as we are, and you're like, well, I count my macros. And they're like, what's a macro?
Definitely.
So what advice, so now that we've kind of talked about that, there are a lot of other aspiring women athletes out there, and, people who really look up to kind of the big leap that you took. So if you had any advice for women who want to get into the sport or who are already into the sport and looking to take that next step, what advice do you have for them?
I basically did everything really backwards. I started lifting way too heavy too fast because it's kind of like the serious athlete that walks in the CrossFit gym and gets rhabdo their first day. That was kind of my journey of weightlifting.
Awesome.
Being naturally athletic and strong, I was lifting weights I was not ready for. I didn't have the mobility for. I didn't have the critique on my technique. I had very terrible technique for a very long time. And there was no one that ever told me, like, stick to the basics for a long time and make sure your body is primed and ready with the mobility you need. And then the weights will come afterward. And I know it's like cliche, a lot of people say that, but the more you can focus on the little details first, the weights later will come so much easier. And so with lifters that are wanting to make this more of their full-time gig, I would say the better you get at the basics right when you first start doing that, the more success you're going to have later.
Yeah.
And I'd also make sure you're doing it for the right reasons, because I know some lifters like that start their own clothing company or start thinking of this in dollar signs usually are the ones that fall on their face with it, because everything in this community is fueled by passion, and if you're not doing it because you love it, it's not going to work out, because people have to buy into what you do and want to like emulate you, and if you're not loving what you're doing, it's so obvious. So that'd be my biggest advice. Just make sure whatever your path you're going down is you're truly in love with what you're doing.
And that's actually a really awesome answer. And,
yeah,
I guess to add on to that, there's nothing wrong with not becoming a professional weightlifter. If you love it, you love it, and that's what you do. But especially for women who are looking up to, especially people like you, athletes, it's okay to not be a professional,
Oh,
if
yeah,
you just
100%.
do it for the love.
None of this that I've done, I didn't like set out to do. Like, I never said I want to go to nationals for weightlifting. I never said I want medals. I never wanted any of this. It's all kind of been a byproduct of I get to go to the gym every day and do what I love to do, and it's just kind of snowballed into now I'm at the level I'm at kind of by accident, because I just pursued what I like doing and what gives me stress relief, what gives me a chance to make new friends, yada yada yada.
That's so inspiring. I love that. That's awesome.
That's about as real as it gets.
Yes. So you might have already answered this in the other question, but is there anything that you know now that you wished that you knew when you first started lifting?
And that could be anything from lifting or business or just like general, like, man, I wish I would have known X.
Well, like I said, I kind of did everything backwards, and one of the things that I really learned a lot from was cutting weight too many times, and I am big on not letting my clients do that, because if I had only cut to 58 for, say, one huge meet, and then properly gained back some weight, and then done it again like 6 months later, I probably could still be a 58, and my numbers would be a little bit more competitive. But when you cut weight too many times too close together, it's really hard to keep your hormones stable and feel good in training and continue to get stronger. And so that would be some big advice I would give to newer lifters, is not to cut too many times.
That's huge, because I see people do that all the time, and I don't think there's not a lot of people just are trying to do this stuff on their own, and there's not a lot of resources that tell them, like, you're really going to mess yourself up if you do this too many times.
Yeah, I wish somebody had told me that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's kind of a trend with women too. We're just kind of bred and ingrained in our brains that we need to be smaller. When we're smaller, you never really talk to a woman and you say, well, what are your goals? And hardly any of them will say, oh, I'd like to move up a weight class, or I'd like to gain muscle. I mean, it's becoming more and more of a thing, but especially, you know, 3 years ago, you talk to a woman, they're like, well, I'm trying this diet. It's like the world is ingrained in our brain for women to be small. And, you know, so we are constantly dieting. I feel like a lot of women are constantly in a dieting state, whether we mean to be or not. Just based on
and
society.
It's really hard to find your weight class, too, and I think it takes some practice. Like, even now, if I hadn't have cut the wrong way or too many times, 58 is not the class for me because my body naturally wants to put on muscle, and it's just not going to work. I would have to be skinny all the time to be a 58, and skinny and weightlifting don't go hand in hand.
No.
So it's like really hard to get that mindset into a lot of people. So I think it's really awesome when I have a client come to me and it's like, help me put on new muscle, help me fill out my class. Like, I love that because they've got like the weight on the bar as priority over weight on their body, and I think that's awesome.
And it probably goes hand in hand, right? Once you get them to fill out their weight class, you know, even if they wanted to cut, like, it's so much easier because they're in the mindset of, I just want to lift.
Yeah, for sure.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Is there anything else you want to add to this? Anything special?
I really like what you guys are doing. I think it's going to be awesome. I think it's a great idea. I love that it's 2 chicks. Most podcasts are
dudes.
Yeah.
So I love that y'all are putting yourselves out there and going to get this started. So I just think it's great.
Well, we're super excited to have you on as our OG interviewer. It's spectacular, actually.
Very, very exciting. We're a little giddy.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you for being on today. We really appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome.
Visit Kristin Pope on Instagram and YouTube. Links will be in our show notes. And also visit her website at barbellsandbows.net. If you like what you heard today, please help us connect with other female badasses. We would love if you would leave us a review on iTunes. Tell your friends about us. Visit our website, which is empoweredbyiron.com. You can find each of us on Instagram. Mary is at MaryMo_92, and Kristin is at Kristin with an I, Lander. Future topics will include nutrition, programming and training, mental health, and just general female badassery.
Yeah, so let us know what you want to hear. If you have any input, that'd be awesome. And guys, this is Empowered by Iron. We want it to be a resource and an outlet for women who are finding their confidence, their independence, and their strength through iron. So thank you for listening. Thank you for checking in. And until next time, I'm Mary.
I'm Kristin.
And this is Empowered by Iron.